An Iranian senior official says should the U.S. go too far, Iran will defend itself at any price, go beyond the region, and hit Europe too, and no limits will be placed on Iran's response, adding a very big mistake such as hitting our infrastructure could make the war go beyond the region and reach Europe. Targets include Bulgaria's Besmer Air Base and the Royal Air Force, that's the UK Air Force Base in Cyprus. Unironically, Trump may have just, disengaged the whole U.S. military from the Mideast, from West Asia, as we should probably call it. Trump ran on this campaign of no new wars, and while he definitely has not fulfilled that campaign promise, he actually did such a 180 on that promise, and it backfired so spectacularly that the U.S. military is basically going to be out of the Middle East. Isn't that something? Well, I don't really know what to make of this because obviously the war has been horrible. I think the war is not over. I think we're about to see, the third and final blow in this war. So it's not over until the fat lady sings, as the old saying goes. But what we all kind of assumed for months is that these bases in the Middle East will not be rebuilt. They're not going to be rebuilt. What are you going to rebuild them with? We know that Fort Knox is sitting empty. What are you gonna rebuild them with? Maybe they're gonna do some more crypto scam coins, another Trump and Melania coin, and they're gonna use the proceeds from that to rebuild these U.S. bases? I think not. Pentagon has come out and signaled this week that it may not rebuild U.S. military bases to their pre-conflict condition in the Middle East. Well, rebuilding the military bases in the Mideast would assume that there is something left of these bases to rebuild. Right now, it's just, these giant patches of dirt, ash, and rubble. That's all that's been left after the Shahed and Khaybar strikes from the Islamic Republic of Iran. So one has to question, what is it that you would actually be rebuilding? There's nothing left. And if you were to rebuild it, who's to say that Iran doesn't just do this again if you threaten them again, which is the whole reason why they have bases in the Middle East. And it kind of leads back to this funny point that everyone keeps making in the mainstream media, in the political class. They all keep saying like, oh, well, who needs the Strait of Hormuz anyways? We can just build a new pipeline from, wherever to wherever. We can build a new pipeline through Syria or a new pipeline from the Al-Fa Peninsula in Iraq and then up. They say all these crazy things, but they lose sight of the fact that a pipeline in the Middle East, in any of the countries that Iran has been targeted, is 100 times easier for Iran to blow up than the ships they've been blowing up. It's 100 times easier for Iran to blow up a pipeline sitting out in the open than it is for them to blow up a highly protected, multi-billion-dollar radar sitting at the most precious Navy logistics hub in the entire Middle East. A pipeline in the Middle East is not going to solve your problems, Trump. It's not going to solve your problems. Also, pipelines cannot carry near as much oil as can be carried on a daily basis with these giant oil tankers that sail across the world each and every day. That's why there are oil tankers. They can carry more. The other thing that we should not lose sight of is that items that are transported by way of cargo ship, such as, just basic consumer goods, but also, gases, things like this, things that can't be fixed by way of a pipeline will have no way of transit. What are you going to do? You can't just build a pipeline for consumer goods. You can't build a pipeline for, gases and random elements like that. Like, no, you need ships. So I don't really know what their whole idea is with we'll just build another pipeline and that'll fix everything. Well, here's the official story. The Trump administration is now weighing a reduction of U.S. military presence in the Persian Gulf, evaluating a pullback of troops from the region where U.S. bases have been battered by months of Iranian strikes per Washington Post, citing U.S. officials, 8 U.S. officials. Shout out to Alsama for the super chat. Thank you, Brother Jackson. Thank you for the support. Goes on to write here, this would be a major direct concession by Iran's longstanding demand for the removal and significant drawdown of U.S. forces from the vicinity of Iran and the Persian Gulf region, which is included in Iran's new demand list for the Hormuz reopening. The Pentagon has already signaled that it might not rebuild its bases damaged by Iran as they were before the Iran war, calling it a once-in-a-generation chance to reconsider its presence in the region. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Bradley Cooper directly supports the idea of potentially moving U.S. troops west from the Persian Gulf. Beautiful. That would be a terrific decision. That'd be a great decision. I'd have nothing but support for that decision. It's a decision that is founded upon the reality of the situation over the past few months. Frankly, over the past several decades. Frankly, over my entire lifetime. You know, what else is there to do but to leave the Middle East? Did it work in Syria? Did it work in Iraq? Did it work in Iran most recently? Has it worked for the Gulf states? The answer is no, 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 no. Every single time it's failed. Time to get out. Okay. Well, as I said a moment ago, it seems as though we're headed into the third and final blowout of this conflict. And judging by Trump's 50%, I should say, of Trump's most recent statements, it appears we're still on that trajectory, which, if 50% of what Trump is saying is still leading in that direction, and his actions indicate that we're also leading in that direction, I'd have to assume that we are almost certainly going to end up at this third and final blowout of war. Trump is not out here claiming victory and saying it's all over. Trump is in fact saying there are no talks or conversations going on or scheduled with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The naval blockade remains in full force and effect. The Hormuz Strait is open and operating. All water mines have been removed or detonated. Well, that's not true. All water mines removed or detonated. I don't think a single one has been removed or detonated. If that was the case, and if the Strait of Hormuz was open and free for all ships to pass, then there wouldn't be a complete fall off, cratering, zero oil exports from Saudi Arabia to the United States for the entire month for the first time in 41 years. That is a startling fact if you are the United States. That's the reality of the situation. Trump is clearly being lied to. We know that for a fact, and we're going to discuss that in another episode tonight regarding the Navy Logistics Hub in Bahrain and how Pete Hegseth lied to him about just how bad the situation was. But the reason why I show you this post right here is because Iran has been pretty straightforward. They said, well, look, this whole ceasefire thing never really existed. A 60-day ceasefire that never existed. The memorandum of understanding, Trump made zero efforts to actually implement it. And we have no need to continue a ceasefire because a ceasefire doesn't exist. They said, we will attempt for the next several weeks in good faith to try and move about some serious negotiations with the United States. But in the meantime, we are going to begin preparing offensive operations for re-continuing of this war because the United States continues this illegal criminal blockade against our country. Now, yes, it is an illegal criminal blockade. And yes, there are impacts that are being felt by Iranians. I would say, however, though, that the biggest impacts in Iran, judging as an outsider, I'm not an Iranian, but the biggest impacts are probably the economic policies that are being instituted by this objectively reformist Pezeshkian government that is causing inflation in the country. All right, there are ways to solve this issue that people like Ali Al-Zaida are talking about, you know, real, brilliant, sovereign economic solutions that Ali Al-Zaida is talking about. But, you know, this is not being heard by those in the Pezeshkian government. Trump's new strategy, and thank you, Iman, for the super chat. You said thank you for your integrity and good work. Thank you. Trump's new strategy, as he says, no negotiations are ongoing, which means we are headed on the path to war once more, is the economic strangulation of Iran. Have you heard this one before? Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Donald Trump, first administration, maximum pressure on the Iranian government. We'll crush them. We'll bring them to the negotiating table. They'll be forced into making a new deal. Didn't go well for them back then. Didn't go well for them prior to this war beginning. It's not going to work out for them this time either. Iran is in the driver's seat. They have total control right now. They have total control, complete 360 field of vision. In fact, they can see into the future in Iran. They can see into the future. They can alter the past. Whatever Trump is worried about what Iran might be able to do, they can do it. That's where Iran is right now. And the Trump administration is just repeating the same old, same old. There's no need for me to even go through this and read to you what the Trump administration's plan is with this economic strangulation plan, because it's just a repeat of the past. And how is Iran doing? You might wonder. How is Iran doing? Well, Iran secured $7.5 billion in oil revenues for the first 4 months of 2026. Iran's semi-official Fars news agency reports that the country has received $7.5 billion oil-related for foreign currency revenue from the first 4 months of the year, which was made available to central bank. Citing information from Iran's oil ministry, Fars said that the oil revenue is 1.5 times the amount generated in the same period last year and is expected to cover the government's foreign currency expenses through late December. So they're already good for the whole year. Already good for the whole year. They have more than 1.5x'd the amount generated in the same period last year. And Trump thinks that he's going to somehow stop them with economic strangulation. I don't know. Well, Iran, according to some reports, make of these what you will, Hormuz report is putting out this information that the IRGC has reportedly planned a massive preemptive strike against the U.S. and Israeli targets, ramping up missile production and a major escalation plan that includes cutting undersea internet cables in the Gulf and a potential ground incursion in Kuwait to seize U.S. bases. I don't think the latter half of this statement is true. This is from the Wall Street Journal. That's why I said take it with a massive grain of salt. The Wall Street Journal says Russia's going to cut the undersea cables. Yemen's going to cut the undersea cables. Iran's going to cut the undersea cables. That Russia's going to invade, London. Iran's going to invade all these countries. Like, okay, come on. Now, do I think, though, that Iran is moving into a position where they're saying we are prepared to be on the offensive? Yes, I do. Because their generals are coming out and saying as much. They are. I covered it on my program last week. They're doing very rare sit-down interviews in the middle of a war saying these sorts of things. And regardless of what you think of Iran, I mean, we have to look at the facts here. Venezuela waited around for the U.S. to make a move. They waited around. They were not on the offensive. Okay, Venezuela is far less armed than Iran. I know that. They're less prepared. I know that. They're, geographically, they're isolated. I know that. But they waited around when the U.S. Navy was sitting off the coast, building up bases, monitoring 24/7 with very good connections, obviously, established in Venezuela, preparing, planning. They waited. And then lo and behold, Maduro gets taken to a New York City prison. Look at the first leg of this war with Iran. What happened? Iran waited. They knew it was coming. First day of the conflict, they assassinate the supreme leader, Sayyid Ali Khamenei. They murder in cold blood 160 plus schoolgirls in Manab and many, many more. It seems to me as though waiting around does not benefit anyone who is labeled as a target of the U.S. empire. Waiting around does not benefit you. Regardless of what you think of Iran, you have to kind of begin to understand why they may be changing their tune. they're winning. Why would they wait around? I don't know. Now, the mainstream media is reporting all these crazy stories. Iran is considering targeting American military bases in Europe, including countries such as Bulgaria, Cyprus, Romania, and Germany, should fighting resume. Again, I don't think that they would probably be so silly as to target in a meaningful way a NATO power like Germany. We saw a lot of fake reports that they were targeting NATO bases in Turkey during the first war, but that wasn't true. That was all a bunch of U.S.-Israeli lies. But we did see, in fact, that they targeted Cyprus during the first leg of this conflict. UK military base, if memory serves correct, in Cyprus. So that was, that is a possibility that recontinues. And if you've watched Iran's targeting throughout the war, initially they started with targets that were pretty close, and then they moved further and further away. Okay, they hit Jordan during the first leg of the war, but they didn't hit Jordan very hard, the Muwafaq Salti Air Base and the other bases in Jordan, until after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed. That's when we saw 3 U.S. soldiers which were killed in these Iranian strikes after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed in Jordan at the Muwafaq Salti Air Base. We also have this. The IRGC states that the war has been fought in a manner intended to inflict economic damage on the United States. After the 12-day war, we completely changed our air defense tactics. We use a $7,000 missiles to shoot down $35 million American MQ-9 drone, and we struck $120 million F-35 fighter jet with a $160,000 missile. So if anyone is applying economic strangulation against a belligerent in this conflict, it would be Iran against the United States. Okay, and we've seen that time and time again. We also have this from the Hormuz letter. Iran sees the full start of the war as inevitable and is preparing to directly attack the U.S. military targets all over Europe as part of its escalation plan. So this was first reported in the Financial Times. Iran is giving 3 to 4 weeks as an ultimatum to meet all of its demands. And if not, this will just be viewed as continued escalation from Trump. They're giving them an off-ramp here. An Iranian senior official says, should the U.S. go too far, Iran will defend itself at any price, go beyond the region, and hit Europe too, and no limits will be placed on Iran's response, adding a very big mistake, such as hitting our infrastructure, could make the war go beyond the region and reach Europe. Targets include Bulgaria's Bezmer Air Base in southeastern Europe, and the Royal Air Force, that's the UK Air Force, Akrotiri Base in Cyprus. Now, the other reason why I'll say that this isn't out of the realm of possibility is because after Ukraine targeted a Iranian cargo ship and they killed 3 Iranians when they targeted an Iranian cargo ship, we did see that the Iranians said, look, we had plans to go and strike Ukrainian targets in Ukraine. We were going to hit 3 different targets, but then Ukraine came out and apologized. Now, again, say that's a bad decision, say that's a good decision. Yeah, it's clearly a decision that hasn't invited more Ukrainian attacks on Iranian civilians, on Iranian targets. So that seemed to have worked out quite well. And as for the Iranians, I think they were probably serious about targeting Ukraine. Why not? They killed 3 Iranians. It would be only but a just response for them to respond to attacks on their civilians to hit Ukrainian military targets in response. So this is all within the realm of possibility. And if we've learned one thing from Iran over the past several months, it's that when they threaten something, they're usually maybe threatening it a little bit quicker, I guess, than they'll actually pull the trigger. But they eventually will pull that trigger. Why on earth should we continue testing Iran and seeing whether or not they actually mean what they say? Because they always mean what they say. They always eventually carry out the acts that they're threatening as long as their sovereignty continues to come under attack. I don't know, folks. It just seems like we are on a death march right now into World War III. And judging from all the available information we have, it seems as though this would not be a war that we would win. By we, I mean the civilians. No, of course we're not going to win the war. The United States, though, most definitely will not win this war. That's what I really mean. The United States will not win this war. The United States couldn't defeat Yemen. The United States couldn't defeat Iraq after 20 plus years. The United States couldn't defeat the Taliban after 20 years. The United States can't defeat Iran. The United States and Europe combined can't defeat Russia and Ukraine. But somehow we think we're going to take on Russia, Iran, China, and whoever else wants to join in all at once. Doesn't sound like a good idea to me. Before you leave, I want to say thank you for the support, because after 2 years of being banned, we are finally back home on YouTube. So be sure to subscribe to our channel and also join as a member on our channel using the link at the top of the description. I rely on the generous support of viewers like yourself to get the truth out to as many people as possible. You can also support the show on Locals or Give Sin Go. The mainstream media and the powers that be are never going to stop attacking us for bringing the truth to as many people as we do. Thank you so much for your support.